Hello friends, the purpose of this tutorial is very simple. It's to make you understand HTML and HTML5 in a very easy and simple manner. I will be explaining all the details, all the tags and everything in a very simple and easy to understand language. So stay tuned and watch this video till the end. First of all, just search for a editor to work with. For example, for HTML, we will be using Sublime Text. If you don't have this on your computer yet, please go ahead and search for Sublime Text and click the download button to download your version. For example, if you are on a Mac, use the OS X version, and on Windows, you just need to select whether you are on a 32-bit or 64-bit Windows. So choose your download version and install Sublime Text because that's the editor we are going to work with. As I said before, I will be explaining everything from what HTML is, and I will be progressing you slowly to HTML5. I know this video is quite long, but it's worth it. Believe me, just that you have to spend this 80 minutes of your life and you will never regret it. So let's get started. First, let's install Sublime Text. So you just need to double click it. Even if you are on Windows, you will get an exe file to install it. So just follow the process. If you are on Windows, I am presently on a Mac and I am just installing Sublime Text editor. So I will just open the Sublime Text. Now this is how the editor looks. You can hide the sidebar if you wish, and here you can select the syntax which you wish to write, and just type HTML:5 once you install Sublime Text, because that will let you know. Just type HTML:5 and hit tab. If you get this structure, that means that you already have Emmet installed. If you don't have Emmet installed, that is, if you are not getting this structure, then you need to install a plugin called Emmet. I have done a separate video for that. You can just go to top right corner and check in the cards of this video and you will find that video. So in case you don't get it, you just please go there and watch that video and come back here so that you can speed code the way I do in this video, and I will not be speed coding much so that you can understand it slowly. So what is HTML? HTML is basically a hypertext markup language. You might have already heard about this, but it's different from a programming language. That is, it doesn't use if-else statements or a loop or much of the complication which is involved with a programming language. So in short, it's very easy to understand. For example, if you can work with Microsoft Word or any other Excel, you can easily work with HTML. It's not that difficult. I would recommend to use any of these three browsers, that is Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox or Safari. If you don't have any of these, I would recommend you to go ahead and install any one of these. I would recommend Google Chrome, but please don't use Internet Explorer because nobody uses that nowadays. And for popular editors, I would recommend Sublime Text because it's a very simple one to use for this beginners. As you go advanced, you may use Atom or brackets or even Notepad++ is fine, but please don't use the simple Notepad because even though it works on simple Notepad, you would not be able to get some errors or color highlighting in Notepad. So please go ahead and install Sublime Text, and as I said before, you also need Emmet if you haven't installed it earlier, so it will help to speed code. For example, as soon as I type HTML:5 and hit tab, it gives out this structure. So that's the advantage of using Emmet. Now here you can see that when you type this single line, you can output this much of the code. That's the main advantage. So you don't have to retype some of the attributes again and again. So this is the basic HTML syntax. This is how you type tags in HTML. You first use a opening angle bracket and then use the tag name and then close it. This is the start tag and this is the end tag, which has a forward slash in the beginning, and everything else goes in between these two tags. So to use comments, we have this exclamation mark and hyphens along with the angle brackets. Also remember that every tag doesn't have an opening and closing tag in HTML. Some are known as empty elements, that is they only have the start tag and don't have the start and end tags. And there are inline and block elements. Now this can be, for example, strong, A, span are inline, div, unordered list and paragraphs are block elements. I will explain this to you shortly, so let's get started and create some tags in our HTML page. So I will just type in here, I will just remove the code and let's go very slowly. So first of all, you need to define HTML. Before that, you need a declaration, but that I will show you shortly. Just remember that everything on an HTML page goes between the opening HTML and closing HTML tag. Then you have a head section. So you just need to open and close the head section. Along with the head section, there is another section which is called body. Imagine this as a human body where the head is on the top and the body is below the head. So you just need to open and close the body tag. Now this is the basic structure of HTML. Now inside head, you can always type in the title for the page. For that we use the title tag. Now these are called as tags. Everything, HTML is a tag, head is a tag, body is a tag, and title is a tag. Everything you see in this color on this page is a tag. So I have mentioned first HTML page as the title. So let's save this page. You can use Ctrl S to save, or if you are on a Mac, you can use Command S. Now let's see in the browser. You will notice that it's displayed on the tab. The title is displayed on the Windows tab. So that's the purpose of using title. You can just use it to describe about the page, whatever the page is about. And just remember that always use a declaration on the top of the HTML page. This is the declaration for HTML5. So you just need to use an angle bracket and an exclamation followed by doc type HTML. That shows that this page is written in HTML5. So this is something we need to inform the browser about. And when you use Emmet, this structure comes in automatically when you type HTML:5. Everything including the declaration is there. You also have this meta tag which describes the character set for the page. This is actually not required because by default the character set is UTF-8, and if you need to describe the language of the page, you can use the language attribute, that is lang, to describe the language of the page. Here en denotes that this language is written in English. So this all comes automatically when you type HTML:5 in Sublime text using Emmet. So this is the basic structure which is required to type any HTML page. So let's give in a title here again. So I will just name it first HTML page, and in the body section let's go ahead and type in our first HTML tag. Now this is a comment. As I said before, comments are not shown on the page. It is for our own reference. So I am just writing here some block elements tags because we will be first discussing some block element tags. Now I will explain to you what is the difference between block elements and inline elements shortly. but let's first learn about the heading tags. Now you can see that how I have used comments. I can also make it a multi-line comment by just including it on a multiple line like this. So you can include comments of several lines, and HTML page will not display it on the in the browser. So this is how you write comments in HTML. Now let's go ahead and learn about our first HTML tag, and I am using H1, which stands for heading. Heading 1 is the biggest heading available in HTML. Apart from this, you also have H2, H3, H4, H5 and H6. These go from the highest to the lowest in size order. For example, H1 is the biggest heading tag and H6 is the smallest one. I will just change the numbers here and show you in the browser so that you can understand how it looks in the browser. You can just follow along me and type it in your browser. You can just pause the video for a while if you find this a bit faster. Here you can see that the H1 tag is quite bigger in size than the H2 tag, and so on. Now these can of course be adjusted using CSS that we will be discussing in our next tutorial, which will be about CSS. But for the time being, you can just understand that H1 is the biggest heading, H2 is the second biggest, and so on, and H6 is the smallest heading available in HTML. Now here if you right click and view element, you will notice that the selection selects all the total width of this page. Now this is what is block element is. Block element takes the entire width of that block. So in case of inline elements, it will take only the width of that particular element and not the entire width of the page. Now let's type in our first paragraph tag. Now I will use lorem plus number of words, that is 100, and hit tab to get some random text. Now this is the advantage of using Emmet, because you can always make it faster. So here you can see that I have typed a paragraph. Now paragraph is also a block level element, so this will take the entire width of the page. If to check whether an element is a block level or inline element, you can just use right click and view element and go to the source code on the right of the page if you are using Chrome, and you will notice you can understand yourself whether it's a block or inline element. I will show some example of inline element tags here. First of all, I am using a block element called paragraph, and inside the block element I will make these words bold by using the strong tag. I will close the strong tag here. Now these three words should turn into a bold. Let's refresh the page and you can see here that it has turned into bold letters. Now let's right click and click on inspect to check whether it's a block or inline level element. Here you can see that it selects only those words, and when I use paragraph tag, it selects the whole block. So that's the difference between block level elements and inline elements. Hope you have understood about this difference. So let's go ahead and type in some more inline elements here. So instead of strong, this time I will be using emphasis, which means italics. So this will turn this word into italics. I will just refresh the page, and here you can see that the word repellent has turned into italics. Now apart from this, you also have bold, that is denoted by B. This is not used much nowadays, but it is very much prevalent in the olden days. Also I for italics is used, but nowadays more semantic tags are used like strong and emphasis. Semantic actually means something which is easier to understand as a word, common word. So I will discuss about this later on, but for the time being you have learned about four inline element tags: B, I, strong and emphasis, EM. So now let's go ahead and learn some more tags. Here I will include a link for read more. Now to convert this read more into a link, we use a tag which is denoted by letter A. Now I will just close it here at the end, and we use an attribute. Now something which is included with the tag is an attribute. So here href is an attribute. Href stands for hyperlink reference. So here I will be referring this link to a external URL. So external URL I will be using here is google.com. So let's type in an URL address here. So when somebody will click on read more, it will go to this website. So this is how the syntax works for linking. So let's refresh and let's click on read more, and this will take us to the google.com web page. So this is how we link using the href tag. Actually it's called href tag, but href is actually an attribute and of a tag. So now let's learn about some empty elements. Now image tag is an empty element. Empty element are those which don't need a closing tag. Now here you can see that I didn't use a closing tag. So image tag is actually an empty tag element. So empty elements, there are many other empty elements like BR for line break, HR for horizontal rule. I will discuss about this shortly. Now image tag takes an attribute called source, which is denoted by src, and we'll have to include a image name here. Whatever image you wish to include in the page should be on the same folder, otherwise you need to include a path here. I will mention a width and height for this image, and an alt tag. Alt tag is something which is displayed if the image is not displayed on the page. So this is the syntax. You can just pause the video and look at it. Now let me just show you in the browser. So here you can see that the image is displaying. This is because I have included the image at the same place as I have stored the HTML page on. So you just need to store it at the same directory or the folder in which you have stored the index.html file, or else this syntax will not work. Now let me show you by just changing the directory structure. First of all, let me create a folder called HTML first, and I will just move the index.html file from the desktop to this folder. I will also include the JPG file, the image file which was included inside this HTML file. So I have transferred both these files into this folder. Now this will work fine. I will just show you once again. I will just open it in the browser and show you that this works fine. So here you can see that everything is fine. Now let's go ahead and put the image file inside a newly created folder called images. and let's transfer this image file inside images. Now this is the correct way to store things in HTML. You need to define a folder for images, JS and CSS files. Now here you can see that it's not showing the image, instead it's showing the alt text which we have entered in our HTML code. Here you can see that we have entered alt text called computer image. Now that's the purpose of this one, that in case if the image is not shown, then we need to show that text. Now we can correct this error by using the path called images and including a slash. Now if I refresh, it will show the image on the page. So in short, if you include the image somewhere else, you just need to include that path in the HTML file. Now we can also link the image to the same image by using the a tag, a along with the href attribute. So likewise, we link the page, we just need to link to that image itself. So I will just copy this image and paste it here in the href value, and I have closed the a tag at the end. So let's check it in the browser. When I click on the image, it should display a larger version or the original version of the image in the browser itself. That's how it works. Actually, browsers also display JPG images. So if I click on this image, it will show this larger version of the image file. Hope you understood how to link images. We have already discussed how to link text here in the read more example. So far we have discussed block element tags. We will again include or discuss some more block element tags here. So one of the common and most popular block element tag is the division tag. Divisions are included to define blocks. So their basic purpose is to define blocks or to convert inline blocks, inline elements into blocks. So for example, span is an inline element. So here if I include this span element here alongside the image, it will display this text on the same line as the image. I will just show you in the browser. Here you can see that the text is displayed alongside the image itself. That's because the image as well as span tags both are inline element tags. Now we can use the line break, which is the BR tag, to split this into two lines. Now here you can see that the information about image text is at the bottom of this image. Now instead of doing this, you can also split both these into divisions. For example, I will just copy this inside this division and remove the line break and just copy and paste the span tag outside the division tag. Now this will have the same effect as we did in the line break case, because this has split this into two different blocks. For example, I will just show you in the browser. Here you can see that the first image and the text is using the division block, and here it's using a line break to divide this into two lines. Now there is some difference which we can notice while using inspect element. Here you can see when I go over the division tag, it selects the entire width of the page. So that's because division is a block level element. Whereas in on the second example, if I hover along the image or the text, it will only show that portion and not the entire width of the page. That's because both these are inline elements and not block elements. Now understanding about inline and block elements is important, because when you start to learn CSS, you will know how important it is. So let's go ahead and type in some more tags here. I will use a line break and a horizontal rule. Horizontal rule is used to display a line, horizontal line. I will just show you by refreshing. Here you can see the line is inserted. Now this is also an empty element because it doesn't need a closing tag. Now I have included one more line break, and I am using a division here just to explain how divisions work to split content. I am using a paragraph tag inside the division tag because this is the correct syntax. You don't include text directly into the division block. You always include a paragraph or h1 to h6 tags. Now I have just copied and pasted this to make two blocks. Now we have two divisions here which contain a paragraph tag, and the paragraph tag contains some text. So this will be displayed one below other. I will just refresh the page and you will see that these two paragraphs here are displayed one after other. Now I will just include one more division tag here. I will just indent this first, and I will just add a division here in the beginning and close it in the end. So in short, I have nested these elements. This is called nesting. I have nested two division block elements inside one division block, and here I am using a style attribute to define some CSS class. Now if you don't understand this, don't worry, this is a part of CSS and not of HTML. I am just using this CSS to show you what's the purpose of the division tag. Now I will just use a width of 50% so that this division has a width of 50%, and float left is something which is quite a vast kind of a subject to discuss in this tutorial. I will be explaining about it in our next tutorial. So let me refresh now, and here you will see that the two divisions is been divided into two columns, similarly like the newspaper columns. So this is the advantage of using the division tag, that you can use it as a block and manipulate it on a web page to create layouts. So that's the main purpose of the division tag. Now this is style is an attribute here, and the value float left and width 50% is something which is included in CSS, and this is called inline CSS use. CSS can be used in various ways, which I will be explaining in our next tutorial. So for the time being, I hope you have understood what division tags are used for. Now let's see some more examples of quotation tags, and these are of course inline elements. So I will just use a line break and a horizontal rule here so that we divide the content properly and you can understand it better on the browser. So I have used the paragraph tag here and inserted some text. Now let's go ahead and change this word to something else. I'm going to explain about an abbreviation tag which is denoted by ABBR. Now this is something which is used to define a abbreviated word. For example, SEO is an abbreviation of search engine optimization. So in that case, if you have SEO on your web page, you can use title attribute and define it in a similar fashion. For example, here I have described it using the World Wide Web text. Now in the browser you can notice that there is a small underline beneath the www word, and here you can see that whenever I hover, that text is displayed on the page. Now this is something which is not that common, but it's always advantageous to know about it. Now similarly, there is a block quote tag which is used to block quote. For example, here I will just use some random text and use a cite attribute to cite this block quote. For example, if I have used this text from a different website, I can give credits to that website. For example, here I am citing renisha.com as the source of this text. So on the browser it will look a little different because it will have more spacing on the left and the right. It's called padding in CSS. Now here you can see that we have some padding here. Now this is how you can use block quote, because this will let the search engines know that you are quoting some text from other resource, and it's not a copy, or it doesn't infringe copyright. So let's discuss one more quote tag, which is Q. This actually inserts double quotes. So this is something which is not that quite popular, but you just need to know as you are learning HTML. So this is how it looks like. You can of course include double quotes by just typing double quotes, but this is more of a standard way to do this. Now that you have learned about how these things work, now let's discuss some more tags in HTML. Before that, let us put some space at the end so that you can see the result in the browser in a better way. Here I will just, because it was showing in the end, so it would be quite difficult for you to see it. So I just inserted some space at the end of this page. Now there is another tag which is called cite. Actually this is different from the cite attribute which we have used along with block quote. This is something which, if you have to mention say a book name and it is written by somebody, for example The Sword by Abhilash Pillai, then this is something which is different than the attribute which was used along with block quote. So if you check in the browser, it will look in an italics text. For example, here you can see the sword is the word style has changed. Let me put a line break here so that we have, or I will just insert some comments here, some more inline elements, and maybe I will include and quotations because these are quotes. So here I will insert a line break and a horizontal rule break too. So let's check it in the browser now. Here you can clearly notice the difference between using block quote and cite. Now let's design a table in HTML. A table in HTML is quite important for uh, which data which has to be displayed in a row and column format. For that we use the table tag, and inside the table tag we display a t head tag. Even though this is not that common, in some cases this is altogether skipped. The table head and table body part is skipped in most of the tables, but this is the right way to do things. And inside the table head goes a table row which is defined by tr, and a table head cell which is defined by th. Now here I am including three headings called name, city and phone, and inside the body tag, table body tag, I will be defining a table row, and inside table row I will be defining table data which is td. And for the name I am including Abhilash here. For the city I will be reusing the td tag and will include my city's name Latur, and on the last table data cell I will include a phone number. Now if I copy and paste this row again and change the text, say I will change the city to Mumbai. Now here you can see that I have included two rows in the body section and one row in the head section. So the head section denotes the title of this table, title of these columns actually, and the table body denotes the rows which have or contain the data for the table. Now let's check this in the browser so you can understand it better. I will just scroll down to the table, and here you can see that the titles of the columns have been mentioned as name, city, phone along with the data for the table. To include some border for this table, you can just go ahead and insert an attribute here for the table tag called border and include the width of that border. Here for this example I am just using 1. You can try out various options. Now here you can see that it's displaying the border for the table. So we have two rows of data here and one row of the title. There are other things which we can do with table, but for the time being this much is enough because table is not used much in nowadays, because CSS has become quite popular for layouts and nobody uses tables for layouts. Only for displaying certain data in a column and row format it's used. Here if you need to adjust the cell spacing, for example here I will increase the cell spacing to 10, and if I refresh it you will notice the cell spacing between the border thickness has increased. And instead if I just give the cell spacing as 0 instead of 1, it will show the border as a single line. Here you can see that it's displaying the table borders in a single line. You can also include some padding which is used by cell padding, and I will just give a value of 10, which will give some space between these letters and its borders. Now the table looks better. There are various ways in which you can style the table using CSS, which we will be discussing in our CSS part. For the time being this much is enough for to understand how a table is coded in HTML. I will just use a line break here to divide the tag content. For your reference I will include this page code in the description of this video so that you can download this page yourself and work on it. You can use the caption tag to give a caption or the title to this table, but it's not always required. You can even use h1 or h2 tags for table titles. So let's try it out with h2 tag. Here you can see that it's displaying the title of the page. Now various attributes can be used with these tags, which I am not discussing in this video, which I will be discussing in my later videos, because if I include the attributes of all these tags, it will be a quite longer video. Maybe it will go to 3 to 4 hours. So let's discuss those things which are important and relevant nowadays, instead of going and learning everything. So now let's learn about list, because list is quite important. For creating a list, you need to define a tag called ul for unordered list. So inside unordered list, you can use li tag to define the list. For example, I am making a list of fruits here. So I will just include 3 fruits: orange, mango and apple. And I will just copy and paste this to show you an example of ordered list. So the only difference between unordered list and ordered list in the code is you just need to change this u to o, so that it's for ordered. Now unordered list use bullets and ordered list uses numbers. Now here in the browser you can see that the difference. Usually the popular one is the unordered list, because that's used for creating menus in HTML along with CSS. So let me show some attributes of ordered list. For example, you can use a type attribute to define what kind of ordered list you want. For example, if you include capital A, it will turn to the alphabetic sequence, and if I use a small a, it will denote it on a lowercase letters. Likewise, if you use a I, it will use the Roman letters in small, and a capital I means uppercase Roman letters. Likewise, you can also include one more tag here. For example, here if I use type A, or say type I, which is for lowercase Roman letters, and if I include start at 4, now these Roman letters will start at 4, 5 and 6 in the list. Now this was just some of the examples of using ordered list, but just remember that unordered lists are more popular. Now this is all about list, and let's move on to something else. It's already 42 minutes into the video and you have learned a lot of HTML. Now let's learn some other tags. For example, a button tag is used to display a button on a page. If I write some content here between the button tags, it will be displayed on the button. So here you can see a button. It does nothing for now, but you can use JavaScript to do certain things using buttons. Now let's go ahead and create a form, because that's where a button is used. You can also use a button in an input tag format. I just wish to show you that. So let's go ahead and create a form here. Let's give a title for the form. Fill up this form, and here we will use the form tag and give an action to this form. Action is nothing but where this form is submitted to once the user clicks the submit button. So this is something which is done in the back end and uses a PHP page or some other page. Here I will just use the PHP. I will not be going into PHP coding or something in this video, so I am just showing you an example. So just ignore the PHP part here. This is all about designing the front end form. You can use a method. Mostly post is used as a method with a form. Another method is get, but that's not used with a form because get usually displays the values in the browser window. So the first thing you need to create inside the form is to create a label for the field. So here I am using a field called first name, and you need to include another tag called input. Now this is where the user types the input. Now I am using the type as text and the name as first name because we need to define some name for every input. So here the label for first name is name. So here you can see that on the browser we will get this name text and input field. Similarly, you can create more fields like last name. I will just use here first name, and last name here, and just copy and paste this input field and change the first name text to last. Likewise, you can also include various other input fields like text area, radio buttons, select. There are numerous input field types which I will not go into in this video, but you will get an idea. You also have a type called email, which is a new in HTML5. So it has an inbuilt validation for email. So if your email is not in an email format, it will throw up an error while you click the submit button. So here you can see that everything is displayed in a line because these are all inline elements. So we would need to include a line break, or we would need to include this in a division block. So the better thing to do here is to include a division block to divide this into separate lines, because that will be helpful when you learn CSS. It would place you in a better situation to style the fields and the label. So let's place these labels and input fields inside the division block. So for the last one, I will also include a division block. Now you can just assume guess the output for this. It will be on separate lines. I will just change the E to a uppercase letter. You can of course style it this one in a better way using CSS. Don't go by the looks here, because this is just plain HTML, and without CSS any HTML will not look that great. So first of all, you just focus on HTML, and when we come to the CSS part, you will learn everything about styling this in a better way. Now there in this example, I will just show you how to use a select list. So for selecting a list, you need to include the select tag and give a name. For example, we will be using gender, and we will use two options, male and female. Once you included the select tag, inside the select tag you need to provide the options. I will include a value of male and text male. Here the value is passed to the next page. You will know about this when we will be going into PHP, but for the time being you can see here that the user can select from a given list. So this is how you can include select inputs in a form field. Now before I end the form by using the submit button, I will show you one more field for password, which is used for login forms. The special thing about password inputs is when you use input and type as password, it will not show the text in the input field. It will only show the star thing which you usually see on various sites. For example, here if I type something in the password field, it will just show dots or star and will not show the text which is typed. So this is how things work in forms. Now let's end this form up by typing in a submit button. You just need to use type submit. You can name the button as submit, and you can use a value is something which is shown on the button, so you can just use submit text. So let's use capital submit uppercase. So here you can see the button with uppercase submit text written on it. So this is how you create a form in HTML. It's very basic, but I hope you understood. I can understand that we are 50 minutes into the tutorial and you would be needing a break. So if you need a break, just pause this video, have a cup of coffee and come back, because learning this much of information in a single stretch might be quite tiring. But if you are staying along and following along, I would appreciate your determination, and I would say that you would definitely become a good web developer in future, because everything is about determination and staying along and having patience. So let's discuss some more tags here, inline tags, and I have just let's include a h3 tag here for the heading, and small is something which is used for denoting some text in smaller text, or maybe a tagline. So this small tag can be used to define a tagline or something which is less important. So here you can see that the small tag is actually smaller than the paragraph tag. For example, here I will just show you by writing some text in the paragraph tag. Here you can see the difference clearly. Now this can of course be styled in CSS, which we will be going into in our later part of the video. Now we will be discussing some more inline tags. Now here for example, if you want to write he is in 10th or something which needs a superscript text, so here we can use that using sup. Sorry, I typed b, but it should be sup, and here we will end it by sup. And if you refresh it in the browser, you will notice that th is written in a superscript mode, so it's elevated. Likewise, you can also use subscript, which is just opposite of that. So I will just type in what's the value of there is some I will just show you one more example where superscript works fine. So here suppose I want to write 10 cube, you can just use superscript and include 3 inside this tag, and you will notice the difference in the browser. So this is one of the applications of using superscript. As I said before, you can also use subscript, which is denoted by sub. So let's type in one more line here. Similarly, sometimes you may also use sub, and I will just type in some value here, or maybe I will just include 10. do here, it doesn't make much sense, but just understand it for the purpose of knowing HTML. Here you can see it's denoted in a subscript form. It's not necessary that you include numbers here. You can always define some text also. So as said before, I will just show you what semantic tag means. Semantic tags are something which we can understand. For example, here I am using a semantic tag called address. Now as soon as you know here about address, the thing which comes to your mind is the contact address. So this is used for that purpose only. So this is something which is called semantic tag, which describes what it actually is. Now HTML5 has introduced many of the semantic tags which we will be discussing at the end of this video, but for the time being you just understand that this is one of the semantic tags and this is what semantic means about. So it's very simple. So here you can see that the address is shown here in the italics text because that's the default. Now that we are close to 1 hour into the tutorial, let's have some fun here with HTML. So I will just type in some fun with HTML. Now this is bring back your interest, because if you think you know HTML a lot and if you have heard about all the tags which HTML contain, or maybe you can show this to your friends, because those who boast that they know HTML a lot might not be knowing that we can write bidirectional text using HTML. Now this is something which you can have fun with friends who consider themselves expert in HTML and HTML5. There is a tag called BDO, which includes an attribute called dir, which stands for direction. And if I mention here right to left, RTL. Now let's type in what's your name and just see the result in the browser. It's quite German or French or Russian. Actually it's written backwards, that's from right to the left, and that's why you can't read it. So this is how you can have some fun. Likewise you might be seeing some text on ambulances which are written in opposite direction, just that so that you can read it properly in your rear view mirror if the ambulance is coming from behind. Now this is how it looks in the browser, written backwards. Now similarly I will also type one more text here so that it's gives some break for your brain. Now let's type in RTL and type in Malayalam. Malayalam is a language which is spoken in an Indian state called Kerala. So here you can see that it's not changing, it's Malayalam, isn't it? That's because if we spell it backwards it's the same. Now that's special about Malayalam. So it's a special kind of a word. I don't remember the name used to define such words, but there is a word of course in a dictionary. I will let you know, or if you know about it, just write it in the comment below. For your knowledge, Malayalam is a language which is spoken in an Indian state of Kerala, and my mother tongue is Malayalam, for your information. So let's move ahead. That's all the fun we had. Now let's move ahead and give a horizontal rule break here. Now say I wish to quote a code, for example, maybe a JavaScript code or a CSS code or something which I need to display it differently on a page. You can just use the code tag, and inside the code tag you can type in whatever you wish to define or to mention as a code. For example, here I will just define a class in CSS. I will just write in a class name and give some values here, properties, border, value 0. This is something which is totally not related to this page. This will be just shown on the page as a code. So let's refresh, and here you can see that it's showing in a different font and size. So we can easily understand that this is a code. So we also have a KBD tag, which is a keystroke tag used to define keystrokes. So you can also use the KBD to explain the keys. Example, press. You can mention press control, say A, and include control A inside the KBD tag. Now here in the output in the browser, you will notice that the control plus A is denoted in a different format, so it clearly depicts that it's a key. Now these tags are used not only to display the text differently on the screen, because this can be used can be done using CSS, but this also informs the search engine what the content is all about, because the search engines feel it easier to read the tags in their original format. So for example, I will just show you an iframe example here. Iframe can be used to include a different web page or a video. For example, you can use iframe to include a YouTube video into your web page. You can just go to any YouTube video page, and you will find an iframe code beneath their video. So you just need to copy that code into the web page to display the video on your page. Here I am including a web page called renisha.com, and I am using a width of 500 and 400 for this iframe window. Now here you can see that the web page is displayed inside this window. This is actually called embedding. This is a form of embed. We are embedding content from a different source inside our web page. So this is not much recommended, because this approach is not readable. It's readable, but it's not that recommended by search engines, because this is quite confusing when you use different content from a different source inside a web page. It also might have some copyright issues. So I am just including this here to make you understand what iframe tag stands for. I will just comment here that iframe is used also for Google Maps. You will find the iframe code on in the Google Map. If you just go to Google Maps, and if you wish to include a location inside your web page, you will be given a code there, and that code is iframe. So now let's create a new file here to discuss some of the new tags that are HTML5 tags. So I will just rename this, name this file to index2.html, and here let's type in our basic structure HTML:5, and I will just rename it the title to HTML5 Semantic Tags, because that's what we are going to discuss now. Now if you go and search on Google HTML5 semantic tags and go to the image tab, you will see various examples of how these can be used. Most of these tags are fixed and are quite easily understandable. For example, header stands for the header section, nav is for navigation bar, which includes a menu, and article can be a blog article or something which describes a important text or post. And likewise, aside stands for a sidebar text. For example, in this example we don't have the aside, we just have the navigation, so it's not necessary that you use all the semantic tags on a page, and you will find various options to use this. So let's go ahead and create an example here. So I will first show you the old way people used to do this, because before HTML5 came in, there was this method of using divisions to divide the content into sections. So for division we used to use the ID along with the division. So I will just type in division ID and give a ID name of header. If you don't know, of course you don't know about ID, but ID is something which we will be discussing in the CSS part, because ID is an attribute which is used to define ID which is used in either in CSS or JavaScript. So let's define one more division inside our header and give a ID name of logo, and here I will just mention that here you can include a logo image. And inside header I am creating two divisions, one is for the logo and the other one is for the menu. So I will just use navigation menu here. Now remember that this is not HTML5, this is HTML4 and the earlier versions, but this is still prevalent. It's not necessary that you use HTML5 semantic tags, but I would recommend that you use HTML5 tags, because that's something which will make you more relevant in today's context, and it will be something which will be expected of you, given that HTML5 has become quite popular and common nowadays. Now here, after the header division, I am defining another division called section, and inside the section division I am including another section with the ID of article. And after the section division I am giving a division of sidebar. Of course we are not styling these divisions sidebar or on the left, on the right, so on the web page it will not make any sense if you view it in a browser, but I am just showing you how things used to be in the past and how it is in at the present. So I have created several of the divisions here and I have given different ID names. Now this is the old style. I will just remove the image comment here and I will comment out this entire portion. So let's begin our HTML5 code here. So new HTML5 style. I will just copy the divisions to make this faster, and now let's edit this out to make it HTML5. Here instead of using ID, you can just give a tag name as header, Now this defines this division as a header. It works exactly as a header, as a division. Division is a block level element, and so is header and all the others. For example, here instead of the navigation menu we can use nav. Inside navigation menu often menus are used. Now this is an Emmet short code. I am using for menus items here. Now here instead of division ID I can just use nav and use the closing nav tag here. So this means that some navigation menu is included inside that content or section. Here likewise I can use the section tag, and for the article we can just replace it with article tag. For the sidebar the tag is aside in HTML5, so just remember that it's not sidebar, instead it's aside. And for footer it's simple, you just need to replace it with the footer tag. Now this is how HTML5 looks, and this looks great because this explains everything in a single view. So that's the advantage of using HTML5. You have other semantic tags called details and summary, which can be used inside the article tags. Here instead of using it outside the article tag, you can even use these details and summary inside the article tag to describe the article body portion as well as the summary part. Now this is some of the uses. It's not necessary that you use it in this order, you can use it in any order on your page. It just describes the content of that particular division or block. So just remember that semantic tags are nothing but it's something which describe the tag in a common man's language or a layman's language. So this is all about the old style. I will be including both these files in the description of this video, so that you can use it as a quick reference. This is sort of a crash course. So before we end this course, I will just go ahead and discuss some more tags in HTML5 which were introduced. Most of these are not used by many, but there are times when you need to use these. For example, there is a tag called canvas which is used to draw using JavaScript. If you know already about JavaScript, you can go ahead and draw anything inside this canvas tags. For the time being I am not going to explain this because that's outside the preview of this video. So let's describe this as is used to draw graphics using JavaScript. There is one more tag which is called SVG, and if you know about SVG, it's also used to draw graphics. So for that you just need to use SVG tags. I will just comment here that to draw SVG graphics. Now you can also include video in HTML5, and the syntax is quite simple. Here I don't have a video on my desktop here, so I will just show you I will just show you an example. I am giving a width of 400 for this video size, and I am using controls so that it displays controls like play, pause, etc. So you just need to define an opening and closing tag and use an attribute for width. And inside the video tags you also need another tag called source, and for source you need an attribute called src, which again is a source file from where the video needs to be the file name which needs to be played. So suppose imagine you have a folder called video, and inside that video folder you have a file name called anymovie.mp4. so this is how you can link to that video. You need also to type the type of that file. For example, you can just type in video/mp4, and you can include multiple formats here. The most recommended ones are mp4 and ogg, so you can just change this to ogg. You can use a converter to convert file into other formats. Now in case the browser doesn't support HTML5, which would not be the case in most of the cases, but if it does not support, you can include a text here which would be displayed if the browser doesn't support HTML5. So this is how you can insert a video inside a web page using HTML5 tags. Likewise, you can also include audio. The only difference you need to make is to the file names. For example, here you don't need the width. You just need to change the video name and change it to audio. So let's change the extension of this file to mp3, and you can also include, I'm just using some random names here. There is no file, such file existing on my system, so this is just to show you an example. You can try it out at your end and it would work fine. Now for OGG, you can just change the format to audio OGG. Instead of mp3, you can use here mpeg, whereas for the file name you can keep it as mp3. And this is how you can include audio in HTML5. So these are quite common nowadays. If you wish to include some video and audio, do remember that your audio and video file size should be very short or less in terms of bytes, because otherwise it would take a lot of time for the page to show that video. So the preferable format is to use YouTube embeds. Other HTML object tag is not an HTML5 tag. It was used earlier, but I would just like to add that you can include or embed any page or say object, say a flash movie or a flash file with an extension of SWF using object tag. Nowadays flash is not that recommended, but instead of using flash, you can also include another HTML file. For example, here I am including a file name called index.html, which is present on our in our folder. It's the first file we did in our earlier session. So let's give a height of 1000 pixels and a width of 800. Now we will see that in the index2.html file, the index.html file has loaded. It's very similar to the one we have done earlier using another tag. If you remember, the tag name was iframe, but the iframe and object are different things. I will discuss about this later because this is an advanced part. So I think we have discussed most of the HTML5 tags so far, and we have covered most of the HTML part. I will just distribute this into line breaks, and so that it displays the output properly. Now so let's see how the video and audio looks here. So as the file is missing, it is not showing any video and audio, but you can see the controls here, and here at the bottom you can see the object embed which we have used, and inside that object embed we can see the iframe which we have used in our indexed.html file. So hope you understood everything very well. Please do give a like to this video, and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it already, because I am going to discuss about CSS in our next video. Also, I have done several other videos regarding how to convert a PSD file into HTML. Just check out my video list in this channel. So before I end, I would just like to comment that tables and forms would need some more guidance or a separate video. And if you would like a separate video on tables and forms, please do comment beneath this video, and I will make sure that I upload it sooner. And one more thing I would like to mention is that uh, uh, the information contained in this video is sufficient, as a matter of fact, to begin with HTML and HTML5, and now on you can move towards CSS or CSS3. So you have graduated in HTML and HTML5, so congratulations, you have done well. And if you have watched this tutorial so far, you have done a very good job. So let's move on to CSS. CSS of course will include CSS3. You will find this video very soon on Makdi. Do stay subscribed, and remember to press the bell icon so that you get all the updates to my videos. I will be going at a very slow pace, and if you have understood everything in this video, you can be sure that you will be understanding everything in my future videos too. If you have any queries, feel free to comment and ask in the sections below.